want to turn to the markets right now. Futures are indicating the markets will open higher this morning as investors are watching and waiting for any developments on U.S.-China trade negotiations. Secretary of Treasury Steven Mnuchin telling reporters a deal will not happen at the end of the month. President Trump, however, still sounding optimistic.
We're doing very well with China talks. China talks are doing very well. We'll see what happens. If it's not a deal that's a great deal for us, we're not going to make it. But I would say that we're moving along at a very high level. We're getting what we have to get, and I think we're getting it relatively quickly. So the China talks are moving along. As to whether or not we'll strike a final deal, that I would never want to say, but they're moving along very well.
And, of course, trade not the only issue that markets are watching this morning. British lawmakers are voting to delay the UK's exit from the European Union. That vote delayed. Joining us now, the Wall Street Journal's global economics editor, John Hilsenrath. John, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Maria.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about in terms of the markets. What do you think is most important this morning in terms of driving sentiment?
Well, I mean, I think that the two most important things are this week, the trade talks and how they're progressing. And then next week, looking into next week, we have a Fed meeting. And obviously, a lot of people are gearing up for that. What's the Fed going to say about the outlook for interest rates? And importantly, what's the Fed going to say about the outlook for its balance sheet, its holdings of U.S. Treasury and mortgage securities?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, not a lot of expectation that we're going to see even one rate hike in 2019. Has anything changed in terms of economic data to change the Fed's pivot?
Well, the numbers are coming in overall soft. I mean, the growth expectations for the first quarter are looking like somewhere with a one handle, something between 1% and 2%, which is a pretty soft number. You know, the Wall Street Journal does a survey every month of economists about their expectations for growth and for the Fed, and we just came out with our survey yesterday. There were some really interesting highlights in it, one of which is that a growing number of economists that we talk to say that the Fed's next move won't be a rate increase, it'll be a rate cut. A growing number of people think the Fed is done on the rate increase front for the foreseeable future, and that if the economy, doesn't bounce back from this first quarter slowdown, then we could be talking about rate cuts later in the year.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that, because if we were to see the Fed actually cut interest rates, is that going to be such a stunning move after what we've seen this last year or so that people will think, well, maybe things are a lot worse off than I expected, given the fact that we're looking at a cut in the face of a slowdown globally?
Well, I don't think anything, on the cut front would happen until, if it were to happen, until, well into the second half of the year. And it would have to be after an accumulation of data convinced the Fed that it can hit its 2% inflation target in the current environment. It would have to be after the Fed was convinced that growth had slowed and wasn't bouncing back. So, what I'm trying to point out is that people are talking about this. It's a little early to say it's going to happen. But I think it's emblematic of just how much the environment has changed. The Fed thought back in September that rates, its target short-term rate would be up to 3.5% by 2020. Now it's not at all clear they're going to get to 2.5%.
Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. I mean, this week on the program, several people actually predicted a cut as well. This week, given the slowdown in Europe and its impact on the U.S. Right. Let me ask you about Europe, in particular Britain, because British lawmakers are voting to extend the deadline for the U.K. departure from the European Union. This is setting up yet another attempt by Prime Minister Theresa May to get her deal passed. The U.K. also would need all other EU members to grant an extension. President Trump weighed on this yesterday. Listen to this.
I'd like to see that whole situation with Brexit work out. I'd like to see, we're talking to them about trade, and we can do a very big trade deal with the UK. We're also renegotiating our trade deal with the European groups and, literally individual nations, and also with the whole.
Yeah, this may very well be the next big issue, John, when the president starts negotiating with European countries. What's your reaction to the happenings?
First of all, on Brexit, you know, this is one of many uncertainties that's holding back the European economy. The European economy was the big disappointment on the global stage last year. It looked in 2017 like it was accelerating, and then it all just kind of screeched to a halt last year. One of the reasons is uncertainties about Brexit, about what's happening in Italy with its fiscal policies, and also about trade, which leads me to the second point, which is that, you know, the president is very engaged in these trade negotiations with the Chinese. One has to wonder if the next thing that he looks at is automobile trade with Europe. You know, he wants the Europeans to lower their tariffs on our cars, and if he plays hardball with them, then this kind of succession of trade uncertainty that the market's been dealing with doesn't go away.
Yeah.
You know, I think the 2020 elections at some point start to play into this, because he doesn't want a stock market and economy, you know, hamstrung going into those 2020 elections. So if he's going to do something with Europe, yeah, I think it's got to be over. You know, it has to be this year.
Yeah, well, he has said that Europe is even worse than China when it comes to the way they abuse America. He said that many times, so we'll see. We'll get ready for that. John, good to see you this morning.
Great to be here.
Have a good weekend. John Hilsenrath joining us from the Wall Street Journal.